Welcome back, Sons of Pitches. It's episode 24. We are back again for another week. We had a big week in the Premier League since the Premier League played 2 rounds of fixtures from last Tuesday roughly through this weekend. So a lot of big title matches with all 3 title contenders playing double headers. We did see one of those teams drop some points, where the other 2 did really well at the weekend. But let's go game by game for that. We'll start with one of the first big games of the weekend, Chelsea United, which easiest way to describe that was, Chelsea United, since both teams played as comically poor as they have been playing throughout this season, and it was a bit sloppy, but it was a nail biter for if you're either a fan of either team, as the game went down to the very last few seconds with a Cole Palmer hat trick, albeit a very poor hat trick in my opinion. Couple penalties that might go either way depending on how you feel about them, but I'll let you guys give me some thoughts about that game as a whole.
Yeah, I think for me it was honestly one of the most Sunday League Premier League games I've ever seen in my life. There was really no tactics, no organization from either side. It was just kick it and hope. That's really all I could say about the tactical side of the game. That I didn't feel like either manager's game plan was instilled in the players. It kind of felt like it all went out the window after Gallagher scored within the first 5 minutes of the game. And then, it just felt like the game was kind of like the epitome of both teams' seasons. Like, it was just fragile, weak defensively, poor mistakes, and I felt like it could have been 10 goals in this game, not just 7. There really could have been a lot more. There was so many mistakes, poor moments of judgment. Just a game of a professional level to be this bad of quality, I just couldn't believe it. It was entertaining overall. Cool to see Cole Palmer to score another hat trick. Not the most impressive hat trick, I'll say, but he does score 3 times, so you got to give him the credit where it's due. And if you're a United fan, I think the writing's on the wall for Erik ten Hag at this point. I've been saying it. I feel like a broken record. He needs to go. That's all I can say about it. It's about time. And same for Pochettino. I don't think if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be hanging my hat on this win either.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. The game, at least, it's that game was both team seasons combined in one game. United had their best players kind of just be the only ones contributing again, with Garnacho and Bruno getting the goals. A little surprised with Anthony. More injuries, more poor play, blowing a lead. It was really poor from United that game, and yeah, I've been more, not necessarily a Ten Hag defender, but more of a give the manager time guy. But I think he has gotten some time. He's been able to get some success, but it's just never replicated, and it's not the way. They find a new way to lose every game, and it's always crap. On the Chelsea side, yeah, they were awful, and they were saved by Cole Palmer again, right, which is literally what happened this season. Once he came in, that's the only reason they started having some success. And yeah, it was a pretty crap hat trick, but a hat trick nonetheless. But yeah, that Caicedo signing is looking worse and worse by the game. Just a huge waste of money for a player who hasn't been able to live up to even a fraction of what he was at Brighton. And I think even at Brighton, everybody saw there was a bigger future for him, and he's gotten nowhere near it.
Yeah, it seems like Caicedo needed the system that was at Brighton to kind of make him shine brighter. But there's also just tactically, Chelsea, it's surprising. Pochettino, I thought he would be the kind of guy that could come in and maybe help put these jigsaw pieces together. And there's been flashes of that, I think. I want to give Chelsea a little bit of credit. I think there's been moments in certain games where Chelsea have looked like they can finally put the pieces together, but it's still definitely not there. There definitely needs some rearrangement to happen. And yeah, Caicedo just hasn't been able to live up to it, even though I think he's a good player. I think there's still hope, but there's things that need to change. I will say, I know we keep saying everything was crap, Cole Palmer or whatever, his hat trick. He's been excellent this season. He's been a standout performer in the Premier League. I think he'll come into the conversation despite Chelsea being poor when at the end of the season when we talk about team of the year. I think it's worth mentioning his name for sure. And I do think Chelsea probably had better control. I think the fact that they won the game they should be happy about, and the fact that I think they probably deserve to win this game, despite in the fashion that they did it was a little like risky. I think they were the better team, even though it's weird because then I think United's goals were actually the better goals. Like they actually came from something. Chelsea's, two penalties that were kind of, here or there, was a little soft, but probably penalties nonetheless, and scrappy goals that led to a nice, easy finish from Conor Gallagher and Cole Palmer, respectively. But then like that Anthony, even though he's been so crap mostly, that his first assist of this season, that was like wild. Like that was Ricardo Quaresma prime-esque Trivela cross. Like that was beautiful. Like that was such a fantastic assist. And I think the quality of goals from United is something to watch out for because obviously they can put it together. But yeah, like you guys said, it was just like sloppy. The possession was never really there. No team really got good movement going. There was 3 good plays that all ended in a goal for United. And then Chelsea pressure that just ended in sloppy finishes to put in the back of the net 4 different times. But that's really all I can say about this.
The difference with this game, like we were talking about it a bit in the group chat, it was like just no excitement from like it was just like, wow, look at this. This is like we were just laughing at them. Like it's pretty sad because it should have been a really good fixture, and if there was
a 7-goal
better
game,
quality play, and it was the quality of it. What just wasn't there. Like there were moments for sure, but in terms of a game, which we'll talk about some other games later on. Like there were some great games this week, and 7 goals, and it was still like, what is this? We're laughing at it. So.
That's what I mean. It's weird. But nevertheless, another English hat trick, a much better one, I will say. These are some top quality goals from who will probably go down. I know Ange isn't here to say it, but he would say it with every bit of his body. Phil Foden, who could go down as one of England's best players, if not the best player, had a fantastic hat trick to get City 3 points. I'll bet City did get 6 points at the weekend to get closer and closer to that title race. We'll get to the team that did lose points. But City's playing really, really well. 8 goals in 2 games. However, they did concede 3 times in 2 games. A little bit of what you've been saying, G, how they tend to be a little bit sloppy back there. I actually think Villa, despite the 4-1 scoreline, actually had like a couple of good opportunities. If they were just like better finishing, and if this team like just had a little bit of more quality, I think it would have been a closer game. I think City was inspired by Phil Foden. Like he kind of pushed them through to this 4-1 victory. It wasn't like a dominance that we usually see. But how did you guys feel about City this weekend?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. They were definitely inspired by the magic of Phil Foden in this game. I mean, it's actually, I think I would go as far to say it's been his magic all season. I mean, I think if you weren't an avid Premier League fan, you would think that this is Phil Foden's team, not Kevin De Bruyne's team or Erling Haaland's team. He's the one that's been kind of carrying the torch for them pretty much in every facet of the game. I mean, he does everything. You find him in the box defending at times, and then he's scoring worldies on the other end of the pitch. I think it's very impressive. I have to say I wasn't the biggest Phil Foden fan when he was coming through. I wasn't really convinced, but boy, has he turned my opinion around. Oh my God, he's so talented. It's unbelievable. And like you said about the defensive frailties, I mean, I can't believe some of the simple mistakes this team gives up. I mean, it's actually aggravating to consider how good they were last season and how successful they were. I mean, to see some of the way they concede goals, I can't believe they don't lose more games. Really, it kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, Foden was just unbelievable this game. I think he was very clearly he was the reason that they performed so well. Because like you mentioned, they weren't necessarily too impressive considering what they've accomplished in the last like 2-3 seasons of literally being the best team in the world without any questions asked. I think this season they probably regressed a bit in that sense, but Phil Foden's play has just exploded, and I think he's been so productive, and especially with De Bruyne kind of dealing with injuries and being a little bit less productive in the last couple seasons, it's just given him the perfect opportunity to just flourish. And I think he's now, we know how Pep kind of goes through his things of kind of running players for like 15, 20 games and then just dropping them to the bench and then just you never see him again. And then all of a sudden they're back again. He does it all the time. And Foden's basically become undroppable. He's playing week in, week out. Other than Rodri, I think those are probably the first 2 guys you're going to put on your team sheet as a city manager. So he's definitely come into his own this season. And yeah, I think this game was just a kind of a whole culmination of the whole season's work of like this is now his team.
Yeah, and I actually want to piggyback on that, Jay. Yeah, Phil Foden and Rodri have to be the two names on the team sheet first. Despite what you would normally think if you weren't following as closely, you're like, oh, it's got to be KDB and Haaland. But both obviously had a little bit of an injury setback for a little while and had to miss some games and are getting integrated back in. But even Haaland has been fully integrated for 2 months now, and this is at the Crystal Palace game, which we haven't mentioned too much, but it wasn't all that exciting. He scores his first goal for almost over a month. Actually, an exact month, because it was March 6th before that he had scored in the Champions League, but then before that was March 3rd against United that he put one in the Premier League. So, yeah, obviously every striker deserves a little downtime, but it's interesting that, because in that time, I think it was Roy Keane that said that every other part of Haaland's game besides his finishing ability is like Football League One level, and that's like some outlandish thing to say, but I mean I do kind of think Haaland needs to work a little bit on his build-up play. He doesn't contribute too much to City's possession game, but I mean that's neither here nor there. He's a fucking 10 times better soccer player than I am. But yeah, it's a little bit, seems like Haaland's slowing down. KDB maybe slows down a little bit, but then the fact that City just have the levels in players like Grealish and Foden specifically and Rodri, it's like you don't even see that. In normal teams where you have two superstars like KDB and Haaland and they're not playing well, you would see it in the score lines, you would see it in the results, and it's like they don't miss him at all. So it's interesting. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about that, but City's depth is unreal.
Yeah, I think with Haaland, I never thought he was a City player. When he first moved over, I was like, this isn't going to work. Clearly, he proved me wrong. But I think that was more Pep kind of fitting the team around him rather than having him just go into the team. And I think he's tried that more this year of building the team and then having Haaland just a part of it. And Haaland can't do that. He's not that type of player.
Right.
And I think this game with Villa, I think when you see players like Alvarez play, I mean, we're talking about, if we go back to like Aguero's, even Gabby Jesus, the way they play as a striker is very, very different from the way Haaland likes to play. So I don't know how it works. I don't know how he can play in this team when they're trying to play like the true City way and not just trying to feed him and all that. Like they almost have to build a man down, which is really difficult, and when all these teams are getting better around you. So, yeah, maybe a little bit of fraud watch on Haaland, but I want to attribute it more to that's more. Yeah, that's the completely clickbait, but it's down to the system. I think in any other team he's still going crazy, but when Pep has his ways and wants to play a certain way, he's going to struggle. Because I don't think he's capable of doing all that stuff.
I agree with everything you said. I just, if we're looking at it comparatively, when Haaland goes like 4 games without scoring, like people act like the world is ending.
Yeah.
If any other striker goes 4 games without scoring, it's like normal. Like it's nothing new.
He genuinely looks awful.
He sets that own bar.
Yeah, but I mean, if that's
during last season, yeah.
He doesn't. That's not his game, though. Like he's there to play the wall passes. He's there to make the runs in behind.
Right.
He's not there to. He's not there to pick up the ball inside his own half and carry it 20 yards and then find the final pass like Harry Kane would do with Tottenham and when he was with Heung-min Son. That's not at all what he is built to do. What he's there to do. So I think we all need to relax. I think I'm completely fine.
He's absolutely fine. I'm more making the point that it's just a weird fit. He doesn't fit in that team.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Jay. You're making some you're making easy clips out of this episode right now. But
you're welcome.
No, but I mean, like there's a validity to what, like I said, Roy Keane said. That, like in terms of the fact that he's probably being a little, he's not a League One player, but there is a facet of Haaland's game that isn't what you normally see from a Pep Guardiola team. A lot of times. It's a striker, who can bang in goals. I mean, think Lewandowski, think, like you said, Gabi Jesus and stuff, or Aguero, but it's also a player that can build up in the play, and Haaland doesn't do that as well as any of the previous players under Guardiola. So it's interesting to see how it's changed. But I mean, when you have creatives like Grealish, Foden, KDB, Rodri just putting balls into an 18-yard box where Haaland manages to hit it with any part of his body, and it's a bullet into the back of the net. I mean, he's unstoppable, so you can't knock the guy. I think he's a true 9. I think it's something that we haven't seen in a while, because the closest thing to true 9s we've seen are like Lewandowski, Suarez, Kane, but even them, they got a really good creative facet of their game, and Haaland is just like, dude, put that ball in the box and I will bury it. So it's interesting to see. I love it, to be honest. I think it's fantastic. And I hope it continues. But elsewhere in the title race, I've been alluding to it. Liverpool played United at Old Trafford. This was, I think, a better game than the Chelsea United game. Despite some maybe poor performances from a couple of key players on either side. But ended in a draw 2-2. Fernandez getting that goal from just inside Liverpool's half on a terrible pass from Kwanzaa. Good finish. Kelleher was out, even though Kelleher has been fantastic for Liverpool to fill in Alisson's gloves. We mentioned it almost every single week. But yeah, just an interesting one because it sets up Liverpool to kind of slack a little on that title race. So it's getting interesting. These next few weeks are gonna matter. Really, they're gonna have to really pay attention to it. But your thoughts on this game? Sorry.
Yeah, I have to say, like, if I was a Liverpool fan, I would be so frustrated with the manner in the way these results unfold against United lately.
Yeah.
I mean, every game they absolutely play United off the pitch, and they just cannot. It seems like the players just fail to make that right decision at the final moment. I felt like there was so many moments where there was either Darwin or Luis Diaz running down the wing, and they had some easy passes that they could have just played across. And I mean, it's a tap in, it's an easy goal for Liverpool, and they're just not capitalizing on some of these opportunities. And every time they play United, it always seems to come back and bite them in the ass. I mean, United scored with their first goal on target, or their first shot on target, and it's from the halfway line, completely out of nothing. I know we were saying that Bruno would always score that 8 times out of 10, but it's just pure luck in my opinion. Like that ball, it's just because I feel like Kwanzaa is an inexperienced player. I don't think any other Liverpool center back probably would have made that mistake. Honestly, it was a pretty rough one to give up at that time, and I mean, what a piece of skill by Kobbie Mainoo. What a goal that was! That was unbelievable. I mean, I don't even know. I'm not really even sure how he knew where the goal was. He wasn't looking at it at all, completely facing the opposite direction, and the camera angle was absolutely perfect just to see the whip on the ball right into the top corner. Keller had no chance, just like he had on Bruno's goal. And I think in the end, United should maybe, because of the way they concede the penalty, feel a little bit hard done by, because that was just horrible, in my opinion, for Wan-Bissaka to go to the ground like that. So clumsy. I mean, he was never, ever going to get close to the ball. I can't remember who. I think it was Harvey Elliott that he took down in the box. But Harvey Elliott's dribbling away from the goal. He's dribbling out of the box. Why would you ever make that tackle? It's beyond me. But yeah, it's pretty massive in terms of the title implications. I think it's a huge 2 points dropped for Liverpool. Now they lose the top spot for the first time in a while, I think it's been. So yeah, we'll see what it does for Arsenal's confidence. I think if you're an Arsenal fan, you must have been having some serious heart palpitations watching this game, because it must have been nuts.
Yeah, I mean, this game probably would frustrate me more as a United fan than a Liverpool fan, because they show that they can go against big teams, put in a performance, do well. Like, I thought they played very well, especially that. Once they took the lead, I think when they were up 2-1, like, they looked like in control until that penalty. But it's like you're getting good performances out of players. They just can't string anything together, and then it can't last 90 minutes. So yeah, I mean, I think this was another game where they completely outshot. 28-9. Onana's got to be facing more shots than most players will face in like probably 2 or 3 months. He's going to get more than players will face in a season. So it's so frustrating to watch them. But yeah, like you guys said, this pretty much puts it as Arsenal's title to lose, in my opinion. I think Liverpool will definitely feel like they let it slip away because they were in control. But yeah, I think injuries may be catching up to Liverpool a bit more than they thought, because that was Kwanzaa, who's filled in well when he needed to, and now he goes and makes a mistake. I don't think Connor Bradley looked fantastic this game compared to the high bar he set, to be fair to him. And they're missing players like, you can say they're missing Jota, but I mean, they still did well with their front three, but a little bit of struggle from Liverpool at this time, which you probably should have expected would have came already. But
yeah, I mean, Liverpool, I think outplayed them for most of the game, and like you said, G, I think most fans would be a little upset by it. But Andre Onana, Jay, I'm glad you brought it up. If it wasn't for the fact that at the weekend he concedes a total of 6 goals, normally it's something pretty poor. Like this Liverpool game, he's like you said, he saw so many shots. I mean, he had 6 or 7 saves. And unfortunately, had to concede a penalty. I mean, in the other game, concedes 2 penalties, and the other 2 goals, I mean, he barely had anything to see. It was a very quick shot off a rebound or deflection, so it was really kind of tough for him. Like, give him credit where it's due. I think we mentioned it already for a couple weeks now. He's been much, much a better player since the African Cup of Nations these past few months. He's finally returning to that form. And it just sucks that, United, we keep talking about every week, United, this player is finally catching form. This player is finally catching form. But every time a new player catches form, 3 old players lose a bunch of form. I mean, look at this game. Your front 3 of Garnacho, Højlund, and Rashford, who each in their own right were kind of catching a little bit of form, maybe not Rashford so much, but definitely Garnacho and Højlund. And now all 3 of them are super, super quiet in this game. Bruno Fernandes has to score that from almost half. Mino has to score a worldie, who's been an underrated performer. And that's the only way they managed to get a point out of this game. So it's a difficult one for United. I mean, it's the same story, but I have to agree. I've been on the Ten Hag out train as well for a while, not as much as G has been, but definitely I had one foot on it, and now I'm like 2 feet on board. I think United needs someone else at the wheel if they want to take these players. I think that the squad quality is probably close. They need a couple more signings, actually good ones, players who want to play for the badge, not just these big names that they always go buy for big money, to try to put it all together. But yeah, underwhelming from Liverpool.
28 shots in each game, by the way.
He faced 28 shots in both. Oh my, yeah, unreal. I mean, the 56 shots in 2 games. And
I saw a crazy stat that they've conceded in 2024 like 500 shots alone.
It's insane.
It's like ridiculous.
He's going to face more shots in probably 2-3 weeks than most keepers will face all season.
Oh yeah,
I mean, 56 shots in a weekend, dude. It's unreal. I mean, Kelleher. United took 9 shots. Kelleher saw 9 shots this weekend. Quickly pull out the other Liverpool game. He conceded 5. He's 14. He conceded half the shots that Onana saw on average in these 2 games.
Yeah,
unreal.
And I get it. They're on probably their 5th and 6th choice center backs at sometimes, but you're still getting some minutes from Varane and stuff. But
Maguire's been much a better player. Yeah,
unacceptable.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I mean some of the mistakes that are happening in front of Onana. If I was him, I would be so mad, dude. Yeah. Like, because he's like Onana caught so much slack too at the beginning of the season, and now he's finally playing well, and nobody's talking about it other than us. Really, we're the only ones that really noticed it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're facing that many shots, if you make a mistake, it's going to be seen, and that's basically what happened the entire beginning of the season.
Yeah, of course.
But now I think that now that the stats are adding up so much, like he's leaps and bounds faced the most shots this season. Right. It's not even close, and I think it's very clear that he isn't necessarily the problem, but he hasn't really helped his case. But
I do. He has taken a massive step forward since the AFCON. I think the thing that I would say is most noticeable to me is he's calm. So much calmer.
Which was one of his best attributes. Until he lost all his confidence after being after that run.
Yeah, that's what I was so impressed with him about when he was at Inter last season, and now it kind of feels like that's back again, which is nice to see because he's a keeper I've admired though, like his whole career really. I was sad to see him go through all that doping stuff and miss a lot of time, and it's nice to see him back now, which is good, and he's performing well, which is even better.
Yeah, a matter of fact, actually, the Inter thing, I'll just say before we move. Inter play a much more defensively sound game. Do you know what I mean? Especially throughout the last season and this season as well. So it's interesting because maybe a lot of these Onana errors, while a lot of them were his own, but maybe he's just forced to make them. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like Murphy's Law. Whatever can happen will happen. The more the opportunity presents itself, you know what I mean? It's like RNG. Like the more shots he faces, eventually he's going to make a stupid mistake and let it go in the back of the net. So maybe we have to reassess everything we said about him in the beginning of the season, because obviously he's trying to show it now. Maybe because now we'll move to another keeper who's been outstanding this season. The team with the most clean sheets in the league, who got 2 clean sheets at the weekend, Arsenal and Raya. I mean, it's hard to say whether or not we had discussions versus Raya and Ramsdale, who's better with their feet, who's a better shot stopper. I'm not going to sit here and say that Raya might be the Premier League's best shot stopper, but when you have a defensively sound unit, a team that knows how to play defense, doesn't concede too many shots, and then a keeper who's worth his money between the sticks, you're not going to concede goals. And I think that could be partially United's problem. But going into Arsenal, like I said, 2 clean sheets at the weekend, 2 and 3-0, gets them the full 6 points. The table is now 71-71. 70 for Arsenal, Liverpool, City. So it's a tight race. I don't have too much to say about these games, but I think Arsenal are keeping their fine form. Havertz keeps getting on the score sheet with the goals and assists. Odegaard putting up some good performances. It looks like Arteta is able to rotate players too, comfortably, getting minutes for the likes of Trossard, Nelson, and even Thomas Partey to get back in the lineup too. So it's interesting. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on these Arsenal games.
Yeah, I don't have too much either. What I am going to say is I don't think Raya is at all anywhere close to the best goalkeeper in the Premier League as the resident goalkeeper here. I will say I think that his numbers are so good because he has the most consistent and solid center back pairing in front of him this season. In Saliba, and I can't even believe I'm saying it, Gabriel has been superb this year. He hasn't really put a foot wrong at all, which I can't really say I would imagine happening coming into the season, given how his Arsenal career had gone so far. But other than that, I think it's kind of results I expected. It's good to see Arsenal continue playing well, playing their brand of football, and being so solid defensively. I think that's something you don't really see a lot. We see so many teams try to play this entertaining and fast-paced brand of football, but they're never really defensively sound, and Arsenal are more than defensively sound. I mean, they lead the clean sheet stats by a mile. I think they have 5 more than the next closest competitor in Liverpool, which is just, I mean, that speaks for itself, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think it even goes further than the back four. I think the midfield and just basically everything Arteta's instilled in the squad is you fight till the end. And I think Declan Rice has been fantastic for them. I think he slotted into that defensive midfield position very well. But not only that, you're getting more. Now you get Jorginho has been getting in a lot more, so you get a little bit more defensive help. Anytime you see any winger in the attacking zone or rather in Arsenal's defensive zone, you have Saka, you have Martinelli, you have Trossard sprinting back to go and help defend, and they're cheering it anytime they go and poke it away. Like there's a different sense. There's a sense of pride to play for the club again that Arteta's brought in, and they know that they're capable of winning it. And I think losing last year in the way that they did, where it's basically fully self-inflicted, they let the lead slip. Probably was the best thing to happen to them because they're ready to go, and I think everybody's hungry. And to be honest, I think they would be the worthy champions at this point of the season. I think they definitely don't have a better squad than either of the two. In Liverpool and City, I don't think that's a question at all. But they have the way they've played and with the heart they play with. Again, we're not giving out trophies just for that,
right?
But they're always focused on the task at hand, and this is perfect opportunities these games for them to slip up, and they didn't. So last year losing, I think, definitely is going to help them this year.
Because actually, I think the Arsenal bottle job season, I was actually really excited to watch them play. Not that I don't like the brand of football they're playing now, but for some reason I was kind of into it. Being a Premier League neutral, I kind of like to pick a team that's playing my preferred style of football each season. I really fell in love with how they were playing last season before they started choking it. But I kind of like the fact that Arteta has now crafted in these past couple weeks, and even for most of the season, but really crafted the traditional 6, 8, and 10 trio in the 4-3-3 in his midfield. Mm-hmm. You have Jorginho and Rice, who are a beautiful 6 and 8 combo. I think they complement each other well, both good on the ball, one better than the other at maybe distributing, while the other one is better at winning the ball back and being aggressive. While Odegaard on his day is one of the best creatives in the world, I think, when he's obviously really playing at his peak. He slips up every now and then, but I still think he's young. But he really is. He sometimes has the vision of KDB every now and then. You know what I mean? He pulls someone out of his hat. So that midfield it's fun and it's traditional and it's like good football instead of like overly creative or like way too complex as a Guardiola midfield might be sometimes, as fun as that is to watch. So yeah, I agree. I think they're worthy right now of being in first place, even though it's really, really tight, and I think it's still wide open. I'd have to sit here and look at every single fixture left in the Premier League to really give you a prediction. So it's going to be tough, but I think Arsenal, yeah, are worthy of sitting at the top spot right now. Just quickly to kind of round out the table, a couple other teams that we already talked about Villa this weekend, but Tottenham got a win and a tie, which sees them kind of sit in that fourth place position. That's also pretty tight, especially with the coefficient. We got to see who's going to get Champions League spot, but I think Villa and Tottenham both going to be playing the Champions League next season as it sits right now because United cannot catch up. But that fifth spot is going to put United back into Europe, which United are going to want. And at the other end of the table, just quickly to mention, because I know we just briefly mentioned it before we started, and it's just ridiculous at this point, but Everton getting another 2 points for another financial fair play charges, different charges, so it's not related to the other points, even though, like we said before, it went from 10 to 6, and now like, hey, let's just give you another 2, and it's like it's just ridiculous that the small clubs, yeah, they're breaking the rules, you know, let's handle that, but like, I mean, saw all these other teams, Chelsea spending $1 billion in 3 windows, and City with like their 115 charges that are pending and not going to get processed for another year. It's like, it's just ridiculous at this point, but I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it's even more ridiculous and cruel, honestly. I mean, look, we have, 7, 8 games left in the Premier League season, and we're still handing out point deductions? Like, what are we doing here? Seriously. I think this should have been handled a long time ago, in my opinion. I think it's really poor on the organizational side of the Premier League to be still doing this, really. I think if they were going to hand out deductions, it should have been that 10-point deduction and leave it at that. I mean, why take away 4 and bring back 2? Well, like, just give them 10, leave it at 10. We made that decision months ago, and everybody knew where they stood. Now, I mean, we're getting to a point now, like I think I said it the last time when Forest got their point deduction, but we're getting to a point now where we could really see someone relegated after the end of the season.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know about you, but that ruins the magic of the final day.
For sure.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be demoralizing because, if you just take it, add the 8 points to their tally, they'd be sitting in 14th, 10 points clear of the relegation zone.
Right.
And I think they'd be happy with that. But I almost feel like now they're they know they're better than these teams because on paper they got more points. They've got a better manager than most of these teams down here. They shouldn't be in these scraps with these relegation teams. But now they have to play down to that opponent, and it's like mentally affecting them and to play like a relegation team. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, technically on the table, yeah, they are a relegation team, but they've performed better than that this season. So it's really got to be messing with them mentally, and it's not good for the product of the game. Which again, that's not the goal, but it's tough for them because I mean, I hate seeing this stuff. We talked about point deductions as like punishments for like crazy stuff. We talk about Juve getting relegated,
right?
But now the way it's going, it sounds like we're going to have 3 to 4 teams having point deductions every season.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are we doing?
I'm glad you brought that up, Jay, because I think I saw up until this year there had only been like 2 point deductions in the Premier League ever.
Yeah.
Now we've seen like 6 just this year alone, which is absurd.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, it's happened with other clubs like in the lower leagues, which makes sense. Like former big teams, like I think Bury now folded, but they had like a 30-point deduction because they basically like went bankrupt. But we're deducting points like left and right for all this stuff. Like it sounds like if Leicester gets promoted, which they're struggling right now, they might not even get promoted automatically. They might get a point deduction next year, even though their stuff happened from multiple years ago. So it's just such a mess, and we'll see what they do. There was talk, I don't know if you guys saw this, about potentially changing to like a luxury tax type thing like the NBA, where basically if you just have to pay fines to the league if you're going over the money threshold, which I guess would work better, but I get you're defeating the point of the rule, which is to make these clubs sustainable and profitable. But I don't know. So something's got to change because we can't keep going this route.
there's so many factors to it too, because like you said, it's like all of a sudden we're doing it. I mean, I like the fact that, you know, we're making these clubs accountable, because we, like, ever since, like, you know, we can have this whole conversation for an hour, but ever since like the Neymar transfer, right? Inflation in player prices is insane. Clubs are spending insane amounts of money. So there needs to be, you know, that check and balance, which I don't mind that fact, but it's the fact that we're hitting clubs with it that like aren't the issue. Do you know what I mean? We're not hitting the big money clubs, the oil money this, or, you know, Russian American money that, whatever it is. We're not hitting the clubs that are just sugar daddies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sure, they generate revenue, but like let's keep the game competitive across all the boards. But it's the fact that, you know, and like you said, G or Jay, the 8 points, yeah, puts them up at 35 points and comfortably in 14th. However, they got hit with the 10 points in what, late December, early January, whatever it was. They haven't won a game until this weekend in the Premier League since December 16th or something, which is more or less when they got the deduction. So it's demoralizing. I mean, it messes with the players' heads. So, dude, they don't get hit with that deduction, right? Or it's handled differently. The players aren't demoralized and rude. They could be winning games. They could sit 11th for all we know. You know what I mean? They could be sitting mid-table, having a great season, and now they're in a relegation scrap because the financial fair play doesn't want to look at any other club but them. It's a little ridiculous.
As if the squad morale wasn't already on the floor too. I mean, what a kick in the balls! You haven't won a game in months, and the first time you go and win,
they hit you with another 2 points.
Basically that wins that 1 point.
Yeah. You might as well finish the game 0-0.
But
true.
Real quick, I will counter at 1 point, Nate. Everton and Forest have easily been some of the most recklessly spending clubs
Forest,
in
for
the
sure.
league.
Well, yeah.
So I mean, accountability needs to be had, because Everton, while yes, they're a big club, historic club, they should not have been spending the amount of money they had. Like, they went through some of the biggest coaches. I think, did they have Rafa Benitez too, and on top of Carlo Ancelotti? Yeah.
Insane.
Like, you have Champions League winning managers coming into this playing in this little shit stadium, which they're finally replacing. You're bringing in players like James Rodriguez, who blew. You're spending 30-40 million on players that literally did nothing. Like, it's reckless. And we've talked about Forest so many times where they literally bought 2 starting 11s and they're still struggling down at the bottom. So, yes, it needs to be done. Like, these are the teams that need to be targeted. But, like you also mentioned, Chelsea shouldn't be able to get away with spending $1 billion on players and still being terrible.
Right.
I mean, that's basically we're coming close to financial fraud and stuff like that with this kind of stuff.
I mean,
but
Chelsea spent $1 billion, and the only transfer that was worth 40.
Right.
Like, imagine if they didn't spend it. If they didn't buy Cole Palmer, they would literally be in this relegation scrap with Everton and Forest.
Easily. Yeah, I mean, they're what, 20 points above relegation zone right now, which sounds like a lot, but that's because they've been winning pretty much the last 2 months. They haven't lost a game. You throw in a couple losses, a couple more drop points, that's probably only 10 points. Like, that's pretty close. They'd be basically Everton without a point deduction.
Take away a couple last-minute PKs from Cole Palmer, a couple dumb deflections, all of a sudden, you're sitting on 27 points.
I mean,
10 points, it's only about 3 wins.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. I think, you know, it's a decent system, but it's the fact that it's not balanced across the board. It pisses me off. They need to make it more consistent.
Until a City or a Chelsea are really gotten after this, it's all a bunch of crap.
One thing I will say though is I'm very like, now that the precedent has been laid on these like punishments, I'm very interested to see what 115 charges gets you.
Right. Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Because
from things I've been reading,
let's give it like they're innocent on 75% of that. That's still over 25 counts. And like, you even give them the 2-point deduction that Everton got for one charge. That's 50 points. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think what I've been seeing is it's going to be much more severe. It's talking relegation and stripping of titles. So
if you know, obviously innocent before proven guilty.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't know. It remains to be seen. The law needs to be consistent. So if they do get proven guilty, it needs to be on the same level times 115. But we'll see. That being said, Premier League wrapped up. We will move over to Italy, where a couple of big battles. The top and the bottom of Italy are tight. There's a gap between those two sections, but once you're in those sections, you are fighting for every little point. So G,
Yeah,
walk us through.
absolutely. Yeah. Outside of the title race, which is pretty much done and dusted, especially after we saw Inter come back and turn the game around against Udinese, who are right down at the bottom, scrapping with the best of them. But I'm going to start us off on Friday night. We saw a pretty important game. I mean, Salernitana were kind of out of it in terms of the relegation fight, I think you would have said a few weeks ago, but they've kind of sort of scraped away a couple of results here and there, and they're kind of, if they're not going to stay up, they're going to make a nuisance of themselves for sure. They're not going to roll over for anybody down there at the bottom, that's for sure, and they showed that against Sassuolo, who are really, really, really becoming in danger of going down now. I mean, they have the least amount of points of the teams that are within 5 of each other that are separated from 13th to 19th place. So they really, really need to find inspiration from somewhere. Obviously, they lost their best player in Berardi for the season, so it's really tough times for Sassuolo. After that, we went into Saturday, where we had some huge games. Um, we saw Milan continue cruising. Pulisic again on the score sheet. Again, I'm impressed. I mean, that's all I can say about him. It's so surprising, really, to see how he's taken to life in Serie A and how well he's performing. I maybe it's the fact that he wasn't always fit and didn't really get the opportunities in the Premier League. But even still, I think I didn't really rate him that well because he was an American player, and I just didn't expect an American player to be that talented and effective in a defensively dominant league like Serie A is. But I mean, he's playing some of these defenders off the field for fun. I mean, it's kind of funny actually watching him put some of these guys in the blender, and he looks right at home next to a guy who's pretty much at the top of the talent pool when it comes to Rafael Leao. So Milan continued cruising, and I think the only other thing there is to say about it is Pioli really deserves to stay, in my opinion. I think it would be outrageous if he leaves and they replace him in the summer, in my opinion. I think I saw a graphic over the weekend that if you look at the top 5 leagues and you compare the points of all the teams, like Milan is right there in terms of point totals with the best of the teams in Serie A, obviously, but in the Premier League, they're 3 points behind the Premier League leaders. They're not far off Leverkusen. They're not far off Real Madrid. And I mean, I think that's all credit to Pioli. He's answered every difficult question so well this season. I think this has been one of, if not the most difficult seasons in terms of fitness for the team and filling holes, especially defensively. And I think he's answered that superbly. There's really no other way to say it. And
Yeah.
I would really be sad to see him go, honestly. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about it. But I wish Andrew was here to add on to it because I really think he deserves a contract extension for sure.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a few times where the hate and anger that Milan fans put towards Pioli is fully misguided. It should be going towards the board, the decision makers when it comes to the squad, because the squad isn't really that good. And in hindsight's 2020, they would be pissed looking at the transfer window without knowing how everything turned out with Pulisic and what's his name, Loftus-Cheek coming in, and they ended up being really good purchases, but the squad just isn't really that great. And once they had injuries, they struggled a bit. But Pioli was able to get the most out of players that probably wouldn't get the most out of. Players like, oddly, I know Ange has been tooting his horns for years about him, saying he's going to be great, but he didn't really contribute much at all until he started getting playing time based off of injuries. So I think, given all those injuries, I think the last 2-3 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, has probably been the healthiest they've been since the start of the season, and they've been on a tear. I think that's 5 games and 5 wins in the last 5 for Milan in the league, and they've been flying. If it wasn't for Inter being literally unbelievable this year, it'd be a real fight for a title. So yeah, I fully agree that Pioli is definitely not the issue. I just don't think that this is that great of a squad outside of probably their starting 11.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting because I think Pioli has managed to get the best out of every players, and he's taken chances on some young players. That even though Ange has been calling for Amin Onley to play, I mean that's not always the easiest thing to see as a manager always. But he gave him the chance, and he's been balling. I mean, you got a reindeer playing so well. You have Loftus Cheek playing really, really well at a 10 position that probably wouldn't have normally thought. And even after losing Sandro Tonali, I mean the board making the decisions like to get rid of Maldini after convincing Leao to stay, and like selling off a couple other players. And now in hindsight, yeah, bringing in Pulisic, who has been phenomenal at this point. But yeah, it's just like if anything, he's the one that's really keeping Milan where it is. I mean, Milan has now surpassed Juve, who probably should be the club that's looking to get rid of their manager because Allegri's just not doing it, and Juve have dropped points from being in a title race within inches with Inter to now getting absolutely just destroyed and falling like a rock in the league in the table. It's just ridiculous. I can't believe that Milan fans. It's crazy to me because I'll talk to Ange. I look at the results and I'm like, oh yeah, Milan fans would be excited. And then you hit football Twitter and you're just seeing like Pioli out, and it's like, what the hell is going on?
Well, I mean, you have to be aware of the situation, right? Ange talks about it a lot. How he thinks they won a year too early,
Right,
a year ahead of schedule, which makes sense. Like this is probably the level they should be at right here. And I think by winning so early and then regressing a bit, and I think they lost a few players too. You're kind of like, all right, well, why aren't we back? Why aren't we there? Like we should be fighting for a title every year. When I think that was probably a little bit of a fluke. I don't want to say a fluke because they're obviously really good now, but it was ahead of schedule. I mean, there's no other way to say it. But now you've kind of built a good core, and now the goal just has to be filling the gaps, building it back up, preparing for people to leave. Like, if Leao leaves his team, I mean, yeah, you have Pulisic, but that's going to be a big issue. Same thing with Teo Hernandez.
Right. The depth
like,
isn't
there's
there.
nobody that could just slot in there and do a job. Not necessarily do their job, but I think that's got to be the next focus. And that's where you probably have to put the blame if nothing changes next year.
Yeah, well, I do think the one positive is whatever happens with those players, they're going to command exorbitant fees. So,
of course,
Milan should be able to reinvest that money. I mean, they've done it. Correct. They seem to have done it pretty well with the money they made off Tonali. I think Reinders, Loftus Cheek, Pulisic, all the guys. Even Chukwueze. I know Chukwueze really hasn't done much, but he's played his part when he's played. He's popped up with a couple goals here and there that have been important. Obviously, he scored in the Champions League and kept them in Europe completely. So, I think he kind of paid back his fee alone, really, in just that game. So, I would be like I said, I think I would be really sad, and I'm glad you guys all agree with me that it would be unfortunate for Pioli to lose his job at the end of the season because he's done nothing short of fantastic.
And you know what, too, like obviously, hindsight's 2020. Maybe they knew about Sandro Tonali's little gambling addiction, but if he stays and isn't banned from playing football, and then, Milan have also had a lot of injuries, especially in the back line. I mean, yeah, they're 20 points off Inter now, but like without all those injuries and a player like Sandro Tonali in this midfield, I mean, they could have been potentially even fighting or coming close to a title race this season. Like these are all ifs, ands, and maybes, but
we also can't forget. But Milan are very much still in it for a trophy this season. They have every right to go and win the Europa League, in my opinion.
Right.
They are one of, if not the most informed teams in the tournament right now. They're hitting their form at the most crunch time in the season, the perfect time. Leao has been absolutely on fire. I think he has the most goals and assists, goal contributions in Serie A since the turn of the year. So, for someone who was being criticized for the entire first half of the season for not
rightly so
at all.
Yeah.
So
now he looked uninterested and poor at the beginning of the season, but now he looks like he's always looked, if not better.
He looks like a phenomenon. I mean, there's goals he scores where he doesn't even look like he's trying, and he's just breezing by players. I'm very scared for that game, and that'll bring me right over to Roma because that was the next game we had in Italy. That was also on Saturday. It was the Rome derby this weekend, and I have to say, for once, it was finally an enjoyable Rome derby for me. The last couple years, it's been awful. We haven't even scored for 2 years in the derby until today. The last time we scored was Pellegrini's world-class free kick that won, I think it was goal of the season in 2022. But we've been shut out by them every time since the Mourinho era and the Sarri era in Rome. But those eras have both come to a close. It's now the De Rossi versus Tudor era, and De Rossi took round one convincingly. I know the scoreline doesn't say that, but we were far the better side throughout the whole game. I felt De Rossi got the tactics spot on again. I mean, it's been so impressive for a guy that really had no managerial experience whatsoever to come in and to see the job that he's done. It's just been nothing short of extraordinary, in my opinion. And even though his ability to manage the game, the substitutions he makes, it's always spot on. He just always seems to get everything right, and he's so in tune with the club. I was a little nervous when Mourinho got sacked that some of the support would go, but I was so stupid to assume that with how important De Rossi has been to the club, obviously being a Capitano himself. And yeah, I mean, it feels like it's even stronger than it was with Mourinho there. I mean, the atmosphere in the Olympico this weekend was unbelievable. I mean, it was so loud. The chants and the colors and the noise, it was amazing. And I think the best thing I saw was after the game, Mancini, obviously the man who scored the winner, ran to the Curva, grabbed the flag that was blue and white, the Lazio colors, and instead of having an eagle on it, it had a rat as the logo, which was just awesome. And he was running around the pitch and waving the flag and just being an overall menace, just doing what he does best and pissing everybody off. I love seeing all the hate that he gets because I have to say, I think Mancini, if it's not Pellegrini, has been our best player under De Rossi. If you saw how he played under Mourinho and how he plays now, you wouldn't even think it was the same player. I mean, he's making passes like he's prime Bonucci back there sometimes. Some of the long balls he's playing and some of the direct passes he's playing through the lines into the midfield and into Lukaku up front, I haven't seen him do that ever. I don't know where that came from. But it's just so nice to see because, I mean, he got called up into the national team. Everybody gave him shit, my brother included. And he's proven everybody wrong, and I just love to see it, just like we keep proving everybody wrong. Another clean sheet for this clean sheet merchant himself, Mile Svilar, had absolutely nothing to do in this game. Lazio offered nothing going forward. And yeah, we keep rolling. We're 5 points clear of Atalanta now. It's looking like we just about might make the Champions League. Atalanta do have a game in hand, but they made it very difficult for themselves because they took a tough result this weekend. I guess I'll go right to that. They played against Cagliari, who have been struggling down at the bottom of the league. They went up. They were leading going into the second half of this game, and then Cagliari did what they kind of have done best all season this year. They always seem to find a late winner out of nowhere, out of the most random players. I mean, sometimes it's Pavoletti, sometimes it's Zabumo Lavumu. It could be whoever, but it's somebody who's going to pop up with a last-minute goal. And I mean, what an important goal. What a time to get it. They seem to be the most safe of those 5 or 6 teams that are scrapping to see who's going to go down with Salernitana. And to beat Atalanta, who have been nothing short of impressive for the last 4 or 5 years now in Serie A. It's no mean feat at all, and I love to see it because I would love to see Claudio Ranieri keep them up. He's such a Cagliari man. He made his name there in Italy before he really became big and went to Roma and then went on to do all of his other things. But Cagliari was really like his first big job, and he saved them the first time around, and it would be just amazing, in my opinion, to see him save them again. Elsewhere in the European race, we saw Napoli pick up a huge win. Napoli had their own Puskás tournament in this game, in my opinion. I mean, if you guys saw some of the goals, you would be astounded. I mean, my jaw was on the floor when I saw Politano's volley fly into the top corner. Osimhen literally jumped over one of the Monza defenders to score a header and then put his mouth in the ground. That's how high he was off the ground. It was absurd. I've never seen a human jump that high ever. It was higher than I've ever seen Ronaldo jump. It was unbelievable. And then Zielinski went and crashed one in off the underside of the crossbar. In typical Zielinski fashion, you never know if he's right-footed or left-footed. He just snipes it from anywhere. But like I said, it was a hugely important Napoli result for Napoli because I really think they have to win every game if they have any hope of staying in this European race. And other than that, the last couple of games I think that deserve a mention probably would be Empoli, because Ange shouted them out as running out of their magic and struggling to score goals. They scored 3 times, and Bayi Niang, who he had said his magic had dried up, sure enough, he's the one that pops up on the score sheet with the game-winning goal in stoppage time. So yeah, they're looking good to stay up. It's always great to get a win at this point in the season. It seems like I feel like if you're gonna win a game, it's gonna have massive implications on your confidence and your squad morale moving forward in these last 6-7 weeks of the Serie A season, because every point is going to be so crucial down there. And then the final game of the weekend, we saw Juventus actually win for the first time since February. It was their second win since January. It was a 1-0 unimpressive Juventus win. It was Federico Gatti, who seems like it's always him that is on the score sheet when it's a 1-0 Juventus result. But not really too much to say. They beat a Fiorentina side who's, to me, felt very tired from their efforts in the midweek. They had a great win against Atalanta in the Coppa Italia. Rolando Mondragora scored an absolute banger in that game, and it just felt like they were just hungover from this game. They were never really up for it, and Juve were able to capitalize, which is not something they've been able to do for a while. But other than that, I think that's pretty much it for Serie A. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add, but yeah, it was a pretty wild weekend. Seems like every weekend's been very wild at the top and the bottom of Serie A lately.
Yeah, it seems like every week that it's almost like at least 70% of the games have huge implications on either the specifically the Champions League spot, getting that fifth since you guys are coefficients, the number one right now, and then of course that insane relegation battle that's between like 6, 7, or 8 teams. So yeah, it's like every week there's a new little story creeping up in the Serie A. So it's definitely been an interesting one to watch, and of course hear you guys tell about every time on the pod. With that, we'll move to Portugal. We had a nice big weekend, but we'll finish off with that conversation. But we do have a conversation to have about Porto, who, with a couple of weekends where Sporting Benfica seemed a little slower. They thought they were going to catch up in the table, but not at all anymore. They lost again at the weekend to Vitória Guimarães, despite beating them in their first leg of their Portugal Cup semi-final. Both teams, funny enough, losing at home. Porto just can't seem. That's back-to-back losses in the league, and it's just weird, Jay. I don't know if you have any thoughts specifically, but I thought they had something good going. They had a couple of really good fixtures in a row in the league, and then I thought they were going to do one on Arsenal, and they were close to doing so, even though Arsenal probably performed one of their worst at the time. But yeah, these last couple of weeks have been, and it's been ugly too. It's been violent on the field. In that game, there was a red card. Pep got sent off, but then there was fighting with the referee. Last week, Chic Conceição, who I talk shit about all the time, was getting in the referee's face, and it was just he got sent off last weekend. It's just, I don't know what's going on over there, Jay.
Yeah, it's a whole circus over there. It's crazy because it starts from the top down with the president Peter Costa that kind of just he's so past it in terms of understanding how football is. I know he's done so much for that club and kind of bringing them back to prominence, but man, is he really hurting them? I think similar to kind of how Benfica's president Luis Felipe Vieira brought them back up to prominence, if you would say, and then was just ruining them. And I think the same goes there because if Conceição can't keep it together, not only does he seem to be failing to inspire the team, he's lashing out all the time too.
Yep.
Kind of going on these rants how everything's fixed against him. He said something. I guess there was a penalty that wasn't called. And was like, oh, they have courage to do that. Or I'm sorry, it's for the red card for Pep.
Yeah.
So they have the courage to send Pep off, but won't do the same for Hillman or Di Maria, which we'll talk about that game later. Right. But it's like just whining and crying about everything. And the same thing, I think that first game where they got the 2 reds against Estoril, they send the president to the press conference instead of the coach and kind of like doing this huge like propaganda speech about everyone's against them. It's so sad, so annoying. But the most concerning part, I think, that's 2 games in a row in the league where you have players sent off for dissent, and you're shooting yourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Like it's really embarrassing to see it come to this, especially with Pep being kind of the center of it. Being like, I mean, one of any Portuguese player's favorite player, but at club level playing against them, oh my God, he's insufferable. And yeah, some of the stuff that we've seen go on is just it's tough to watch. And I'm glad that they're kind of out of the spotlight now, and real good football and good team building is kind of taking center stage. But for the good of the Portuguese game, I would like to see definitely a change at president and at manager for Porto.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
Oh, go
for
ahead.
me, from the outside, I think embarrassing is the best way to describe it. And I think Conceição and the management up top at Porto is setting such a terrible example
Mhm.
for the players, and that's exactly what you're seeing on the pitch. I mean,
Yep.
to have players sent off for dissent 2 games in a row is nothing short of disgusting, in my opinion. I mean, I would be appalled if I was a Porto fan and seeing my players act like that. That should never be happening at the professional level, in my opinion.
And,
Yeah,
you know, it's crazy too because this is all coming into light, and it's like Porto imploding, and they're actually getting poor results in the league, and it's all like coming into the light of the footballing world. But if you're an avid Portuguese league fan, you've been seeing this for years. Porto are just a disgusting team. They do things dirty. They have terrible challenges, and honestly, it's almost like every season it feels like the refs are favoring them. So the fact that they're complaining about it now after like 2 games. And it's not even like the refs are sending them off, like you said, for bad challenges, or maybe like, oh, maybe that challenge was just a yellow. Like, you're just cussing them out, and the refs are not having it anymore. You know what I mean? And they're not like, and it's funny too, because especially this is a club and a president who's been charged and like proven guilty of corruption and like paying refs and like all this stuff, and he's still in charge, and he's like, and now this is what you're complaining about, the refs coming against you all of a sudden. And yeah, yours are both right. It's just absolutely embarrassing. Where's the discipline? Like, when your players are lashing out, sure, you back the player at first, you know what I mean? Because that's your player, you're contracted to him. But where's the in-house discipline? Where is controlling these guys? Because at the end of the day, they're supposed to be professionals. And you say, G, that the fans would be embarrassed. I guarantee you that at least half the fans are just used to it, and this is their mentality too, and they back the club 100%. They back the club 100%, and it's not even funny.
Well, and
it's
you know,
way more than that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was being light.
if you're a player and you see your coach and like the president or and the owner of your club out there in the media, like, yeah, they're not favoring us, like they're reffing the games against us, like that almost gives you every right to be like, yeah, you're reffing against us, like you almost have to believe it that that the ref is reffing against you.
Yeah, it's just.
I will quickly credit Guimarães. I think they've been very good second half of the year. They've kind of come back. Jota Silva has been a revelation this year. He's been linked. Looks like it's going to be between me and you, Nate, who ends up getting him this year. I personally hope he stays because I like to see these clubs retain these players.
Right.
Guimarães especially because I think they end up basically fielding most of Portugal's U21 team, at least the core of it. They feature a lot of good players from Portugal. So for my own personal bias, I hope they keep some players and stay competitive again next year. But yeah, no, they've turned it around. They look pretty solid this year.
Yeah, I mean, only 2 points off of Porto, them and Braga. And then speaking of Braga, they lost their manager to go to Botafogo, and then they lose. Which, Jay, I think you know more news about this. They lose 3-0 to Aruca, who that's going to be the replacement.
Yeah, they signed him. He takes over at the end of the season, and he comes in basically a quick, a little trial run and wins 3-0 against them. So, yeah, I don't know if they should be happy or disappointed with that, but I do think he's done well for Aroca, who's a pretty average side. But they've played well. They're sitting 7th, kind of best of the rest with Moreirense. So I think it's probably a good hire. We'll see how it goes because Braga really had a problem this year with they were winning games, but they were winning games like 5-3 and like going down, like they're conceding stupid amount of goals, and like it's basically like circus games, like kind of similar to that United Chelsea game we spoke about, with probably a bit more clean. But yeah, they definitely need to kind of tighten it down a bit, and hopefully he'll be able to do that for him. Because again, I want to see Braga succeed, and especially if Porto's going to be doing some rebuilding, maybe a new manager and all that stuff. Great opportunity to take advantage of it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could still see Porto drop out of Europa League at this point, the way they're going. So it's going to be interesting for sure. And yeah, the Jota Silva conversation, like you said, Jay, I agree. I think I would like a team like Braga and Vitória Guimarães to keep some of their players that are performing well.
Absolutely.
Because I want to see them push for title. I want the Portuguese league to be a little bit more competitive. While, of course, I would love to have at Sporting, and of course, you at Benfica to have a player of Jota Silva's caliber, especially he's been playing so well this season. That's easily said, but yeah, it's a little bit less. It's a little bit more unselfish to want him to stay there. But we'll get into the showpiece games of the last 9 days or so, where me and Jay's little derby, the Derby Interno, that is said in Portugal, or the Lisbon Derby, a little bit easier to say in English, where Sporting Benfica duked out the round 2 and 3 of our little 3-game head-to-head, where Sporting came out on top overall, moving on in the cup, as well as winning the league game. Admittedly, probably two of Sporting's probably poor matches of the season. I don't think we were all that good. I think we had moments of brilliance that let us put some balls in the back of the net, a couple of moments where we outplayed Benfica, which is why we saw our results go our favor. But again, I think it highlights, I think you'll agree with me, Jay, that I think Ruben Amorim is just the best manager in Portugal right now, and definitely a better game manager than Roger Schmidt, because even in times where Benfica look like they have control of the game, they have the better momentum, then he just can't keep it. Couple substitutes later, the momentum's gone, it's shifted, and it's tough. I try to look at these games as a neutral and not be biased, so I try to look at it from both sides, and there's moments where Benfica should be killing these games out, and then they just don't, because Ruben Amorim changes the tactics a little bit, and Roger Schmidt has no answer. But Jay, you tell me how you felt.
Yeah, tough, because if we start with the midweek cup game, I think that was one of the best games Benfica's played all season. I think they were fantastic, and I do think that they played significantly better than Sporting and probably deserved it. And I think they were definitely hard done by with a few calls. I think they had a goal called back incorrectly as offsides when it came off a defender's challenge that probably should have stood, and I think there was also a clear as day penalty that was missed. So I think they might feel a little bit hard done by, but I think Schmidt should feel he fielded the right team, and not necessarily the right team, because it's basically the same as it's been for a while, but set the right system, chose the right striker with Tankstead, who I thought was brilliant in that game, everything but the goal. So it was looking promising. I was very confident going into the next game, but unfortunately we just didn't do enough in the cup. So going into the week, Schmidt just decides, hey, we did good. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And instead of adapting, which is exactly what Ruben Amorim did, I think you guys fielded a team that would kind of, I think we spoke a bit before this where I mentioned it looked like Amorim was fully going after the right side of, or rather the left side of Benfica's defense, with targeting Arsenis and Neres, who wasn't really going to defend much, with Geni Katamo and Trincão going at him, and even St. Just to cover while he's bombing forward. And it basically worked, because both goals came from Geni Katamo on that side. Even though I do think Arsenis was phenomenal. Like, granted, he got sent off. I thought he did really well. But what didn't happen was adapting. We got one sub, a meaningful sub, which was Tankstead out for Arthur Cabral, like for like, when they looked like crap, like they weren't playing well, when we should have adapted. Whereas for Sporting, you switched out Murita for Bragança, was able to hold more possession. You wanted a little bit different type of attack. You bring in Paulinho in, bring out Pedro Gonçalves, put new fresh legs in Marcus Edwards. There was a purpose for every single substitution. And for Roger Schmidt, it was, hey, 90th minute, let me go put in 2 Hail Marys for no reason, even though I did nothing the entire game. So it was really tough to watch, but I think it was a managerial masterclass by Ruben Amorim. I think he very clearly established himself as the best coach in the league, and one of the best, if not the best, Portuguese coach out there at the moment.
Yeah, as far as the cup game, it's funny because it highlights. I think I had mentioned this a couple weeks ago on the pod, and I've definitely talked to you guys about it in the group chat. But Ruben Amorim's tactic, which is what I love about Sporting at the moment, is the fact that we can build differently based on the opposition. If we know we're going to get crushed, we play 2 more defensive fullbacks, and we play like a back 5. If we know we're going to be absolute favorites, without a doubt, we play 2 attacking fullbacks, and then we can transition into one or the other on either side to attack a flank. And like you said, Jay, in the second game, we go right away with Geni Katamo, who's been He's underrated. I know we joked that he might get a big money move and then flop somewhere, but I think he's been a little underrated this season. I think some of the opposition fans don't see how the quality that he has, and obviously he demonstrated that with two like really good half volleys, and excellent finishes in that game. But also, I think he's super creative. He I mean, even in the first game, remember I told you Auchnez was getting torn up by him and Edwards on that side. He's a fantastic dribbler. I think he needs a couple more years to really get his finishing product and his passing up to par. But as far as beating a player individually one-on-one, he's excellent at doing so, and he still gets back. He has the legs to get back. He's not the best defender by any means. He's more of a midfielder in his own right. But yeah, in the Cup game, Jay, if you look at it, Nunes we started on the left, who's that left side attacking player, while Isgayu was on the right. So Amorim looked like he's like, oh, maybe I can attack this left flank of Benfica, well, Benfica's right flank. But that didn't be the case. He realized, he recognized that Ba and Di Maria were the more attacking and substantially more influential side of Benfica's attack, switches it immediately at halftime with 3 substitution, putting in Sanjus for Diomande, who hasn't been as good since the African Cup of Nations. Now switches to the right flank, where he knows that David Neres isn't going to get back at all, and he knows that Auchnez, while is a fantastic player, isn't a true fullback, and attacks that side. We get a goal immediately as the half starts. We get 2 goals in the second game from that side, and it just changes the whole game. There's recognition. There's something that Schmidt doesn't do. Schmidt, I think, can set up a decent lineup most of the time. He can do what he can make do with what he has. But then if that tactic does not go to plan, there's no reaction. There's nothing. There's not even pro-action, really. There's no plan B.
Right.
And doesn't even know how to modify plan A to even get 8.5. Like there's just, I don't know. There's just nothing there. And then, yeah, I agree. The substitutions also help to keep fresh legs in key areas of the pitch where we might have been winning or losing battles, to keep or to retake that part of the field. The officiating here and there, I think overall, I think there was missed calls on both sides. I mean, if I'm honest, I think maybe Sporting got a couple of favored calls, but I don't think it was overly absurd. I think I don't think the officiating loses or wins the game for either team, because I mean, you have the Di Maria thing, who, you know, like it's textbook. It's soft, but it's textbook. He initiates aggression. He hits a player in the face. That's by definition. Like if VAR looks at that, which I can't believe they don't even look at it, that has to be a red card. Is it soft? Would I be a little bit hard done by if it was my player? Yes, but would I have to admit to it that he does swing and he does hit him in the face? That's just what it is. This is not hockey. You know what I mean? Like it just is what it is. But then, of course, Hillman also should get a second yellow, so that gets missed too. So it's a makeup call, but it's a makeup call that happens so much later in the game. If Di Maria goes off, I think we were 1-0 at the time. Now that changes the perspective. Di Maria gets the assist on the Benfica equalizer, so now he's not there for that. It's like it changes the whole game. I think that game goes Sporting way to maybe 2-0. You know what I mean? That moment changes the game, which is the only moment for me that's hugely controversial, but I'm not necessarily super upset by it, but I know you have some thoughts.
No, yeah, I agree. I think the first game was different. I think the first game definitely, I mean, again, Benfica played well enough to win it on their own, but I think they definitely got the short end of the stick on 2 calls that I think were pivotal in that game. But going into the weekend game, I personally only think there's 2 good refs in the Portuguese league, and they were both on that game. I thought they reffed the game well. With the Di Maria thing, I almost feel like VAR saw it, and it's probably a yellow. The ref missed it, and he probably, because if you notice, the ref went after to go talk to Di Maria. Yeah. So it almost sounded like, I can't give you a yellow because of VAR, but cut the shit and all that stuff. Right. I'm fine with it. Keep the player on the pitch. Again, I'm biased because it's from my team. I don't know if I'd keep this. I'd like to say I'd keep the same thought if it was the other way around. But then again, I'm also good with them keeping Hillman on the field. They let the game get decided on the pitch, and I'm okay with it. I don't think there was anything egregious. There was a weird thing with Gyökeres on a breakaway where they called a foul on Otamendi, which looked weird as shit. Yeah. Which, again, I think I've seen a replay after. It did look like Gyökeres somehow stepped on Otamendi, but it's not a foul, regardless. But, yeah, there was a couple weird things, but overall, I thought it was well done. They were in control of the game, the referees, in that game. But no, it was just, I think the only takeaway is that Ruben Amorim is very clearly the best manager, because he brought a team that is not the best squad, rather. I think Benfica has the best squad. pretty comfortably, but you guys have the best manager and actual team
Cohesion.
by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even close.
Yeah, because I mean, we lack experience in certain areas where I will always fight for and argue for Inaccio's talent. I think he's still immature in some big games. He makes poor decisions, even though I think he's trying to learn to be like a libero role where he gets forward a lot. He does make a lot of big driving runs, a lot of good forward passes. But yeah, he's inexperienced, but he's only 22. Center backs bloom so late. I think he's gonna have a great career.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of I think the goal that we concede in this and even in the cup matches comes from a lot of that inexperience and some of our holes in our defense. But Coates with an absolute stunning captain performance that really kept us in this game. And then that Otamendi thing, you watch that replay, like if you feel like it, Jay, watch it back. Otamendi literally like throws his foot back and gets the touch and then goes down, and Gyökeres goes through it. And I get it, he gets the contact, but it's like it's so generated, like intentionally. He intentionally draws that contact for no reason, and then who knows? Gyökeres puts it in the back of the net with no foul, and now it's 3-1. It's just, but like that's what I'm saying. Like there's a couple, like you said, a couple moments they balance each other out more or less. So I'm not going to complain. Obviously, I won. I can't complain too much. But I don't think this result was crafted by any refereeing decisions.
No, the league result absolutely not. No, I think fully justified Sporting win. They were the better team on the day, and probably this season they've definitely performed better than Benfica.
It was very big of you to admit that, Jay.
Huh?
I mean, I try to be as clear as possible. I don't know what happened to Schmidt because nobody could see this collapse of literally like coming in, walking in, being the best manager. Like, holy shit, we just attracted a really good guy to come in here, and he comes and wins the league in his first attempt. Like, oh my God, we're going to be great for a while. And then just lay a goose egg the second year. Like, that's crazy to me how that happened. But I will say, I think that the two games were definitely a good advert for Portuguese football. I don't know. I know you caught a little bit, G. From an outside point of view, I believe it would have looked like a good game. I don't know if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, I did. I definitely caught the game of the weekend more than I caught the cup game, but the game of the weekend was fantastic. I think I would have thought it was gonna be more of I guess cagey and tense, but it really wasn't. It was so end to end and entertaining, especially towards the end. And the way Katamo took that goal, to see him burst into tears. I mean, you could see how much it meant to him to score that goal. It was awesome.
Yeah, it's it is really cool. I'm finally like feeling. Sporting have been a little bit underwhelming for me. I'll always love them, but like these past couple seasons, it's been growing under Amorim, like this passion, and some of these players really, really feeling it, which is honestly, admittedly, what I don't normally see from Benfica. There's a lot of passion there. But I think it's really growing in Sporting. It's going to be sad to see because rumor has it that Amorim might be going to Liverpool to replace Klopp. He's on the top of the list besides Xabi Alonso, who doesn't look like he's moving. And then Gyökeres' agent came out to say today and said that if Amorim leaves, it's going to be really hard for Gyökeres to say. So, dude, if the football gods love me at all, if they could just both stay one more season, I think it would be so good for Sporting's futures. Make a couple other sales besides those two guys. Bring in some money. Bring in some couple other movements. Let's get a back-to-back title, maybe. I mean, granted, we have to win this one first. There's a lot of football to play.
You've won it.
It's tough. We'll see. But I do have bragging rights over Jay after this three-leg fixture with 2 wins and a tie going Sporting's way. Progressing in both stages. 4 points clear of Jay with a game at hand. That'll be played out over the next week or two, I think, a week and a half or so. So we'll finally be level on games played, and we'll see how that shapes out. But, of course, there's still a couple games left in the season. But, Jay, I think a positive note for you is that the fact that, I mean, you're personally kind of conceding the title. There's so much to play for, but it makes it, I think, because you're 4 points behind, if Sporting level out the games played and go 7 points ahead, theoretically, then I think Roger Schmidt, if he wants to try to salvage anything out of this season, needs to dedicate all focus to the Europa League. And like you said, I think if you can get tactics right, if Roger Schmidt can start making good decisions, the talent is there at Benfica to make a really good account of themselves. So in my opinion, and probably yours, throw everything we have at the Europa League. You know what I mean? make a good account
Yeah.
of Portuguese soccer, make a good account of Benfica. I mean, there's a lot of big clubs in there. We already talked about Milan, Liverpool, Leverkusen, but
Hmm.
like if you can catch
Don't
them on
forget
a
about me.
slight and Roma, right? Sorry, G, you were kind of conceding that the Rolenza derby earlier, but it is a lot of good teams. But I think if Benfica can have a really good defensive game, catch these teams on a slightly bad day, maybe. I mean, it's all to play for. I think. I think you should have hopes if you can just really throw everything at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how crazy would that be? Because I mean, you guys know the Gutman curse we have,
Right.
where after he won the two Champions Leagues, said Benfica will never win another European title without me once I leave. And I think it's 7 or 8 straight European finals and across even youth leagues and stuff. So it'd be crazy if he comes and has an
Yeah.
awful season, pretty much, and then we go ahead and win the Europa League, winning our first European title in 60 years. That would be something. But yeah, I completely agree. I think they have the most frustrating part is they have the talent, they have the team, like they can do it. It's just making some tough calls, making some big decisions, and playing players where they belong, and maybe switching up the system, trying something different. Because I mean, Rafa's basically started every game, and I thought he was the worst player on the pitch last week. So make a big call and kind of change something up, and I fully back it. I think the bigger issue is, are they going to do anything?
Right.
I think they can, but is something going to change?
Right. So all to play for, Sporting with the advantage. But like we were mentioning, this derby may be over, but make sure you come back later this week when we talk about the first round of the Lorenza derby. That's going to be super exciting with the Europa League on the table for those two teams. But moving away from Portugal, we're going to quickly wrap up two other countries we always love to talk about. In the Bundesliga, where exciting news, Leverkusen keep their unbeaten dreams alive. However, if G's correct, he pulled up this statistic for us. With a win next week, Leverkusen could seal the title early, which means they're also going to start putting all the guns on the Europa League. So that's going to be interesting to watch too. But they did get the win at the weekend. And then we also saw, while we've been talking about Bayern, we thought we were getting back on track. There's unlucky timing for Bayern, as at the time of recording they did already play, but we'll wait to talk about later this week in the Champions League. They did crumble and lose to Heidenheim this weekend, 3-2. So they're definitely not coming anywhere close to that title ever again. But then we did have a Leipzig win at the weekend. Dortmund lost to Stuttgart, that puts them level on points with Bayern, which is unreal. Guirassy really firing that team forward. It's been a hell of a season in the Bundesliga. Some of these clubs have been putting on awesome displays, some one-man shows, some 3 or 4-man shows, but these teams are really exciting, and I think it's such a good reflection on the fact that Bayern are finally going to lose that dominance, but also it's not just one team taking it from them, it's the whole league is taking the spotlight off Bayern. And I feel like you guys have similar thoughts, but I'll let you guys weigh in on those couple games this weekend.
Yeah, it's so nice to see kind of 3 or 4 teams swallowing Bayern up this season.
Right.
Their form certainly has not helped them in any way, shape, or form. And I mean, I think this game kind of sums their season up a little bit. I mean, they were cruising through the first half. They went into halftime 2-0. And Heidenheim came out of the blocks flying in the second half, completely turned the game around, and Bayern just couldn't live with them. I felt like they thoroughly deserved to beat Bayern on the day, especially based on their performance in the second half. Bayern didn't deserve to get anything out of it at all, and really unfortunate. I mean, I think it was last week that I said it, that after the game, Tuchel was just so dejected and seems so unmotivated. He pretty much already gave up any hopes of winning any sort of success this season. And I mean, for your manager to be so open and public about that, I can't imagine that's very motivating for a player in the locker room, especially going into such a massive tie against Arsenal in the Champions League, literally within the next 48 to 72 hours. I mean, I can't imagine how any confidence is anywhere near the level it should be at Bayern right now. Elsewhere, I think it's awesome to see Guirassy continue scoring. I think it's very sad that Harry Kane's doing the most absurd numbers they've ever seen in the Bundesliga outside of Lewandowski, because Guirassy scored 24 times in 22 games this season or something ridiculous like that. which is unbelievable. I mean, if it was any other season, we'd be talking about Gerassi being the next big striker to come out of Germany and be playing for probably one of the top teams in Europe. Another striker that we had a great performance from was Luis Openda. He was involved in all 5 of the goals in this game, even the one that Leipzig conceded because he was the one that was at fault for the penalty, which is just funny. I mean, 2 goals, 2 assists, and an assist for the other team too is just hilarious in my opinion. And like you said, that fact is correct. Leverkusen can in fact go and win the Bundesliga next weekend if they win at Werder Bremen, which is just unbelievable. I mean, if they go and do it and go undefeated through the whole season, I mean, that is just nothing short of ridiculous, especially if you go and do that for your first ever Bundesliga title in history, nonetheless, too. I think it's just incredible. I mean, the joke about Leverkusen is Neverkusen, and they're never, ever going to win anything of importance. And I mean, they might as well go and win a treble this year. They're still in the Pokal final as well, so who knows? I mean, sky's the limit for Leverkusen this season. And if Xabi Alonso stays, I can't imagine why any of their star players would want to leave in the summer. I mean, why would you want to go anywhere? They're going to be in the Champions League. They're sure as hell going to be competing for the Bundesliga next season. So if I was a top player like Grimaldo or Frimpong in that team, even Boniface, who's really kind of dropped off the face of the earth in terms of that team lately, I wouldn't really want to go anywhere, especially if Xabi Alonso is going to be around next season. That's for sure.
Yeah, and not to mention that, I don't know how any player would ever think they should leave, because I think Xabi Alonso has gotten the best out of most of these players that got their best form of their careers. So I think these type of players exist, and if they're kind of have agents in their ears and stuff like that, and the wrong people in their ears, they think they can take this and go somewhere else and get paid. But when you really think about it, this is the best fit for them, no matter what. And if the coach is staying with Xabi Alonso, saying he's staying at Leverkusen, he's not leaving,
right?
Run it back for sure. And I think now, if the club is smart, you go and reinvest and prepare for players and the coach to leave and make sure you're ready to go, because now you have a whole year to kind of prep for it, because I think it's the writing's on the wall. He's going to a big team for his next job, because he's very clearly proven himself as a fantastic manager. And I cannot state enough times how happy I am to see Bayern not win the Bundesliga.
Yeah, and it's funny too. You say, Gerassi's having a hell of a season. And I'm just gonna say it just to manifest it. Sporting might have a little vacancy. I hope more clubs don't notice how good Gerassi's been playing, because he's another player of incredible stature and aggressiveness. So I'd love to see him play in my team, but he would make a great addition to a lot of clubs.
The thing about Gerassi that really pisses me off is, we're over here talking about Ivan Toney being $100 million and all these top Premier League clubs coming in to buy him. Gerassi's buyout clause is 18 million euros or something ridiculously low that. And nobody's even sniffing around him. I get he's not that young, but he is keeping up with the best of them in the Bundesliga. He's outscoring all of them besides Harry Kane, who is in far and away the best team, most creative team in the league. So I think if you're an Arsenal, if you're a Chelsea, if you're even a United, you should be balls deep in Gerassi's agent's ear right now, trying to get that guy in your club.
Yep. Yeah, and if it is the 18 million you said, I mean, he's 28, he just turned 28, so on average 27 to 30 is that prime age. That means he's got 2 solid years of a potential 24 goals a season. That's worth 18 million. You know what I mean? That's easy.
70 million.
Yeah,
these days.
That's what I'm saying. So it's worth it absolutely, despite his age, despite whatever you might think. You know what? I think he does good in a lot of teams and a lot of leagues, not just this one-off season. So it's going to be interesting. And I wanted to confirm, while Leverkusen can technically win with a win next week, Bayern also has to drop points, because there's 18 points left on the table and they only have a 16-point gap. So if they win and Bayern tie, then the season's wrapped up and done and dusted. So I do believe, pretty sure Bayern have to drop points too, if I'm not mistaken. But we will confirm next week as the results come out. We don't want to jinx it. We want to see Bayer Leverkusen do it at their own speed. So we'll have to wait and see for that. But then finally, we'll just jump quickly to Spain, where we had the Copa del Rey final with Atletico Bilbao. And Atletico Bilbao won on penalties, which is fantastic. Which, I mean, this is the cherry on top. We almost kind of put this one together ourselves and manifested it. We've been talking about Atletico Bilbao for the past couple weeks now, how much we loved their club philosophy, how much we love the way they play football, how much we love some of those players. So while they're not the biggest club in Spain, they're not the most talked about club, I think this is a fantastic way to show that, they mean business. They've never been relegated despite their really insane transfer policies. So this is like, it really is beautiful. I think it kind of sums up everything for them. I don't know how you guys felt about it, maybe the game specifically, but it is really nice.
Yeah, I did catch most of the game. It was awesome. I mean, it was two clubs that I would say equally deserve to win it based on the history of the clubs and the story and whatnot. But I thought it was so nice to see just like the passion and emotion of some of the Bilbao fans and the players. Like, they were literally reduced to tears. Some of these people have never seen that team ever win anything in their lives, and to see them do it in that fashion, I thought it was fantastic. It was so amazing to see the video of the Williams brothers hugging after the game. I heard an awesome story about how when they had first came to Spain, their father went to London to work, so Inaki was really the father figure for Nico in his life. He was the one that was taking care of him every day, packing his lunches for school, and now they're doing it on the big stage and winning trophies for their local club. I think that's so awesome. I mean, I think about the meaningless trophies that we won together as close friends, practically family, with my brother in the team, and I can't imagine what it's like for those guys. I mean, they must all feel like family, growing up from the same region, playing together pretty much all their lives, coming up in that academy, and to go and do something so historic for that club. I mean, they're all legends now. They're all gonna be legends in Bilbao history for what they achieved this weekend.
I mean,
Yeah, the type of club just makes it so much more special because of how it basically represents an entire region.
Yep.
On the pitch and as fans. So everybody is from the same place. So it's almost like a national team, if you will, where they're basically all one common goal. Everybody's the same, came from the same place. So it makes it so much more passionate anytime they win. And really, anytime a team like that or a club that size, that historic, is able to win when they've kind of struggled in the past couple of years or decades, like a lot of these older clubs have. It's always nice to see. Like, it's good to see Villa back in the Prem. It's good to see Forest. Like, these are historic teams. Like, we want to see these older teams that have been historic and all that stuff have success. So I'm glad to see it. And it's definitely a good story.
Yeah, and like you said too, G, like some of these guys were probably neighbors growing up. You know what I mean? Like, imagine that, dude. Like, yeah, they're brothers and stuff, but like, imagine just like your best friend from down the road, and now you guys are 27
Like,
and you're playing,
growing up in the academy together, playing their entire professional lives. Like, it must be such an amazing feeling.
It is really, really dope. And I want to highlight a performance, but I'm actually going to use this to transition over. Now that we're done talking about all the leagues, we will get into our five-a-side where we pick a goalkeeper, defender, midfielder, forward, and a flex. And G, I know you were kind of struggling in our little warm-up debriefing to pick a goalkeeper, but I'm going to butcher his name. But Atletico Bilbao's keeper, Aguirre Zabala. I'm terrible at that, but
that is how you say it.
That's not too bad. Thank you. There's a lot of consonants in there, but I mean, he doesn't concede two of the penalties. Obviously, only concedes one goal throughout the game. I think he made a good number of saves too, 4 saves in the match. It's a good shout. Winning a trophy at the weekend, I think that's a pretty good shout. I know you have 2 other ones you want to briefly mention, but I do want to throw that name in there for your consideration for the team of the week.
I actually have 3 other ones. I wouldn't say I was overly impressed with his performance. But just based on a number standpoint, I mean, 2 more clean sheets to the total for David Raya. I think it obviously deserves a mention. Right. Although I think it's more on his center back pairing in front of him than it is on him. He does make the saves when the question's asked to him, and that's the name of the game when you're playing goalkeeper. So I have to give him credit where it's due. I thought Dubravka was pretty impressive too for Newcastle. I think he earned the Man of the Match award, if I'm not mistaken, for the game, which you really do not see at all ever anymore. Right. These days, seeing a goalkeeper get any kind of recognition like that. So I thought that was pretty nice to see for the goalkeepers union. And Alexander Nupel, Stuttgart's goalie, had 7 saves against Dortmund. Obviously, their win put them level on points with Bayern Munich. I think they're both on 60 points now. Yeah, pretty big performances across the board in all the leagues, really. But I do like Aguirre Zabala, whatever the fuck, however you say his name. winning a trophy, obviously the meaning is so much more important than winning just your average league game. Even if it's at the top of the Premier League table, I think winning a title for a Basque team is way more important in my opinion.
Yeah, I think if you're happy with that, I think that's a good shot. I think it sums up what we were saying. It's kind of hard to stick any of the other players in there as there was only one goal in the game for them. So I think that's a good way to kind of represent their win at the weekend, and of course a pretty decent goalkeeping performance. For defenders, I don't know if you guys have any names off the top of my head. I can't think of any per se. I know we mentioned obviously the Arsenal pair playing really well, but they don't get on the score sheet, don't do anything overly fantastic. Is there a name that jumps off the page for you guys for defenders this week?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out my shithousing aficionado, Mancini, winner in the derby, and just his performance overall. I thought he was fantastic. Like I said, his passing and his contribution throughout the 90 minutes was just phenomenal. It was everything we needed in a game of that magnitude, and I think it was probably the most important of the game, one of the more important games throughout the leagues in the weekend. So for him to pop up the goal, I think it's pretty easy shout for me.
Anything from you, Jay, or are you good with that?
Can't really come up with too many more. So yeah, I'm good with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I know Tommaso Aguero gets a goal in the Cagliari game against the Cagliari game against Atalanta, but I don't know per se. G, that would be something you would have to tell me if he had a good performance overall. But yeah, I think I'm good with giving you a little Roma shout because you might be a little upset with this Roma derby. So.
I would like to. I think it would be cool to give it to Augello. Obviously, I mean that's obviously such an important win for Cagliari too. But I think the derby being Roma Lazio just means a little bit more, in my opinion.
Okay. Then I'll give you that one. Midfielders, I know we have a couple of names. I think it's kind of an easy pick, but it's worth at least to have a discussion because we'll get further into it for flex. But obviously, I think the easiest name to pick is Phil Foden, with a fantastic hat trick, inspired City through that game and got the win at the weekend. Of course, Cole Palmer also gets a hat trick at the weekend. I'll bet the fact that we did say that it wasn't as good. But a hat trick's a hat trick, and he's been performing all season as well. So he obviously merits a conversation. Of course, Geni Katamo with a very impressive 2 goals, fantastic quality finishes, decent performance throughout the game as well too in the Benfica Sporting derby. So that's another derby that we had this weekend. A lot of big derbies actually. I didn't even think about it till just now. So I think those are 3 good shouts. I'm sure you guys probably have a couple more if you want to throw them out there, but I think Foden probably gets the spot, but we can at least argue it.
I gotta be honest with you. I almost want to give it to Katamo just because of how important that game was and like the meaning of the league title. I know obviously like City's competing at the top of the Premier League, but Foden didn't score a hat trick against Liverpool. He didn't score a hat trick against Arsenal. He scored a hat trick against a team that's not competing with them at all for the title.
That's true.
And Katamo scored 2 outrageous goals against your biggest title rival. So I think, in my opinion, he deserves a shout over him. I know Foden obviously scored more goals than him, but I like Katamo for the midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves, but I personally would probably put all 3 in for the remaining 3 spots because I personally consider Cole Palmer more of a forward than a midfielder.
Okay.
But yeah, I think of the moment. I know technically Foden's is any game remaining for City is in the moment because it's a 1-point gap. You can't slip up, or it's basically every game's a final. So I think they're all impressive because I mean Palmer also gets an assist in the second game of the week that they play. So to me, I think they're all 3 are deserving. But if you want to pick the best midfielder, I'm gonna go with Katamo just because of how much more impressive it was given what his averages and how big that game was. And he won the league for Sporting in that game.
Yeah, and it's cool too that he bangs in 2 goals because he has a lot more defensive duties than the other 2 that we talk about. So I'm good with Katamo, obviously being a Sporting guy myself. It's pretty easy for me to say that. I will just quickly mention there was 2 other performers that I wanted to talk about. Maybe we'll get into this conversation for the flex. But KDB obviously got 2 goals and an assist at the weekend too in Man City's other match that Foden didn't play in. And then Jae-Sung Lee for Mainz got 2 goals and an assist as well. So he's a little honorable mention. Not that we talk too much about the rest of the Bundesliga. But just some players to definitely keep on your radar who perform in a lot of weeks. But for forward, I know you want to qualify Cole Palmer as a forward, Jay. But I actually, even if you do qualify him as a forward, I think there's a player that outshines him in the Bundesliga, which was G mentioned him earlier. Openda gets 2 goals and 2 assists at the weekend. Yeah, draws the penalty, but he's a forward. Unfortunately, they don't make the best defensive decisions. So I'm not going to put it against him too much. Before direct goal contributions, which, even if he concedes the penalty for them, he wins them the game essentially by his own hand. So I definitely think that's a pretty easy shout for the forward position. I don't know if you guys have any other players to throw up there.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Openda was my shout.
Yep, I'm good with that shout.
Yeah, I think that's easy, which means we leave our flex position. I think I just want to go Foden, but I mean, it's like I said, we mentioned a couple of good performers, so it's a conversation we can definitely argue. I don't know if you guys have any arguments for any of those players, or even a third or fourth player to throw in there.
I think I'm taking Foden just because of the sheer quality of the 3 goals he scored. I mean, I think it was the third one that he scored. He was practically falling down, and he's still stuck in the top corner. I mean, that's world-class ability. There's really not too many footballers in the world that can pull that off. So for me, I think he's an easy spot for the flex. Palmer, like I said earlier, really not impressive at all. His hat trick, two penalties. Every player should be scoring their penalties. In my opinion, as a goalkeeper, I think the shooter should always be scoring. And he scored a deflection. I mean, everybody can do that too. So,
yeah. I mean, like I said, moment. It's with the title push. I think that it was a really important performance.
Yeah.
From Foden against a fairly impressive Villa in the top 4 of the league too.
City this year too.
Right. So I do think that was a very important game, and another game where like we've been saying, proved he's the guy. So I think he truly deserves to get into the
team. Another game too where Guardiola had made that quote that goes around the media every now and then, and people gave him a lot of shit for, especially having coached Messi, and the fact that he said Phil Foden was like the most talented player he's ever coached, or whatever the exact quote is insane. But I mean, hey, at this point, I can't even argue it. The performances that this kid puts on the pitch at such a young age, I mean, who am I to tell Guardiola that he doesn't know exactly what he's talking about? With that wrapped up, we do have, I'm going to butcher it again, Zabala in net for winning that trophy for Atletico Bilbao, and of course 2 penalty saves and 4 saves overall in the game. Gianluca's boy Mancini with a goal and a really leadership role in that pivotal match in that derby. Katama with 2 goals in the Lisbon derby, which was fantastic, and I'm going to love to throw that in Jay's face a little bit. We do have Openda with 4 direct goal contributions in a wonderful game for Leipzig, and of course Phil Foden with his beautiful hat trick to keep Man City in that title race and keep them getting those 6 points at the weekend. It's been a banging episode. We do have, like I said, that Champions League and Europa League conversation. Just a little hint. It looks like we've finally been proven wrong, and the UCL is really living up to what its historical quality is. Well, remains to be seen what the rest of the games look up.
We just know it's going to suck tomorrow now.
I know. Now we jinxed it. But no, the games that are played so far at the time of recording have been fantastic. But make sure you keep out for that video. Of course, it's going to also be round 1 of the Lorenza Derby, which is going to be fun. We're going to see who's the man of the house at that point. But make sure you're keeping up with all of our social media, keeping up with all our posts and all our videos, and of course, keep on being the son of a bitch.